For what purpose does the gentleman from Arkansas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 1450, the Treating Tribes and Counties as Good Neighbors Act.
Does the gentleman wish to file it as amended? Does the gentleman wish to call up H.R. 1450 as amended?
Yes.
Okay. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 1450, a bill to amend the Agricultural Act of 2014 to modify the treatment of revenue from timber sale contracts and certain payments made by counties to the Secretary of Agriculture and the Secretary of the Interior under good neighbor agreements and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Westerman, and the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Grijalva, will each control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arkansas.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and to include extraneous material on H.R. 1450, the bill now under consideration. Now yield myself such time as I may consume. Mr. Speaker, I strongly support Congressman Fulcher's bill, the Treating Tribes and Counties as Good Neighbors Act. This legislation would greatly enhance the collaborative stewardship of our federal lands with tribal and county partners. This is a bipartisan effort that passed out of the House Natural Resources and Agricultural Committees unanimously, and it is my hope that we can pass this thoughtful proposal in similar fashion here on the House floor today. The federal government owns roughly 640 million acres, an astonishing 28% of the entire country. States, tribes, and counties all have a very clear interest on how these lands are managed. When federal lands are mismanaged, it is those closest to the lands that are most impacted. There is no clearer example of this reality than the forest health and wildfire crisis affecting vast swaths of federal lands. Fire knows no boundaries between managed land and unmanaged land. It knows no jurisdictional boundaries. As federal land managers struggle to address this worsening problem, Congress developed Good Neighbor Authority to empower states to assist in active forest management efforts on federal lands. Under the Good Neighbor Authority, the Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management had the ability to authorize states to undertake restoration projects such as hazardous fuel reduction, habitat improvement, and road restoration on federal lands within their borders. By all accounts, this program for states has been very successful. Since 2014, over 490 projects have begun in 38 states. Just last year, approximately 274 million board feet of timber was sold under Good Neighbor agreements. The 2018 Farm Bill extended Good Neighbor Authority to counties and tribes in the hopes that even more active forest management could be accomplished. Unfortunately, the participation of counties and tribes has been limited. Current law does not give tribes and counties the same authority that states have benefited from to retain timber receipts for use on additional restoration work. This reality removes a substantial incentive for counties and tribes to pursue Good Neighbor projects, and the numbers have shown this to be true. There are currently only 6 counties and 5 tribes that have entered into Good Neighbor agreements. H.R. 1450 offers a solution to this dilemma by extending the authority to retain timber receipts from Good Neighbor projects to counties and tribes to fund additional restoration projects, bringing them into parity with the treatment that states currently receive. In addition to providing important parity, this bill will also improve cross-boundary work by allowing restoration projects to occur on non-federal lands. As I mentioned earlier, wildfires know no boundaries. Good Neighbor Authority has unquestionably been a successful program that has not yet reached its full potential. I believe that Congressman Fulcher's bill will improve this program and pave the way for tribes and counties to partner on much-needed forest management efforts. Fully empowering counties and tribes to utilize this authority will reduce wildfire risk and improve the health of our federal lands for generations to come. I want to applaud Congressman Fulcher for his leadership on this important issue. I support the bill and reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlemen, General leave is granted without exception. Gentleman from Arizona is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I may consume. H.R. 1450 is the Treating Tribes and Counties as Good Neighbors Act, introduced by my colleague from Idaho, Representative Fulcher. This bill updates the Good Neighbor Authority program to update the incentives for tribes and counties to partner with the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management on restoration projects designed to enhance resilience and promote healthy landscape. As climate change intensifies, it is crucial that land managers utilize collaborative, consensus-driven tools such as the Good Neighbor Authority to facilitate conservation, restoration, and resiliency of federal lands and neighboring lands. However, under current law, only states are authorized to retain revenues from timber sales and contracts executed through this program. This legislation provides parity for tribes and counties to increase community participation in the restoration of our public lands. I urge my colleagues to support the legislation and reserve the balance of my time.
Arkansas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Idaho, the sponsor of the bill, Mr. Fulcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Speaker. For years, states could enter into cooperative agreements with federal land management agencies to aid in reducing the excess fuel load that makes fires in the West so damaging to people, property, and wildlife. H.R. 1450 fully extends the same authority and access to revenue that states have to counties and tribes. Some states, primarily in the western U.S., have large percentages of their land controlled by the federal government. In my home state of Idaho, for example, it's 62%. As a result, citizens in my state must generate enough economic growth to sustain our needs from just the resources contained within the available land remaining. One can argue that Idahoans and citizens from other states with a similar dynamic are merely tenants of their federal landlord. Counties and tribes face a microcosm of that challenge within the states they reside. There are counties in my district, like Idaho and Hawaii, for example, where the federal government controls more than 83% of the land within their borders. Without ready access to the natural resources and related tax revenue in these areas, it's difficult for residents in local municipalities to create wealth and provide the ingredients necessary to raise families and to grow business. This bill would enable access to resources. As a result, the livelihoods of people in rural America would be enhanced through job creation, new sources of income, and the economic activity that comes with it. Federal land management agencies are often unable, due to lack of resources, or unwilling, due to bad policy or litigation, to adequately maintain the density of tree growth, brush, and other vegetation that creates the fuel load for wildfire. Yet local residents, as tenants of the land under their own feet, can only wait and hope for their federal landlord to come up with the resources needed to responsibly manage land in and around their communities. H.R. 1450 empowers local counties and tribes so they can engage and at least have a chance to put some wisdom into how these lands are managed. We in the West care about our environment. God's blessed us with an abundance of natural resources, and that comes with the responsibility of wise stewardship. H.R. 1450 recognizes and incentivizes just that, allowing a portion of receipts from timber sales, for example, to be shared with counties and tribes. That's a win-win situation. Tribes and counties are local, and as such, they are on the front lines of the land management battle. Thank you, Chairman Westerman, my co-lead, Marie Glusenkamp-Perez, and all my other colleagues on the Natural Resources and Agriculture Committees for their support of this legislation. With that, I yield back.
Reserve.
Gentleman from Arkansas reserves. Gentleman from Arizona.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 4 minutes to the gentlewoman from Washington and sponsor of the legislation.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Ranking Member Grijalva. I rise today in strong support of H.R. 1450, Treating Tribes and Counties as Good Neighbors Act. This bill is critical for districts like mine. Why? Because this bill gives back the flexibility that is critical to counties and tribes who understand that wildfires and natural disasters do not discriminate between federal and non-federal lands, and ensures that we use all of the tools at our disposal to mitigate the effects of wildfire and maintain healthy forests. In the 2018 Farm Bill, Congress expanded Good Neighbor Authority to make tribes and counties eligible to enter into Good Neighbor agreements. However, tribes and counties were not afforded the same authority as states to retain the receipts from these GNA project revenues to reinvest in conservation. This fundamentally reduced the ability to engage and partner on critical management projects like wildfire mitigation, invasive species management, and habitat maintenance. Additionally, the 2018 Farm Bill removed the ability to carry out restoration services that were agreed to under Good Neighbor agreements to take place off of federal lands. You can literally go out in the woods and you can see the boundaries and political boundaries between treated and untreated that's resulted. Adjacent tribal and county land that is essential to the health of national forests can no longer be restored as comprehensive landscapes. Rural timber-based county, Skamania County, my home county, is a leading innovation with Good Neighbor Authority by hiring foresters with these funds to advance timber harvest for forest health, fire management, and invasive species management. All mounting issues on the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest that have not been addressed for decades. Skamania County was the first to build a relationship with the State Department of Natural Resources to determine how this Good Neighbor Authority could help the forest health conditions of the National Forest, which make up 80% of Skamania County. This partnership between Forest Service, the state agency, and Skamania County has been hugely successful. The additional flexibility provided by this bill is a common sense fix to a program that's been proven to be highly successful. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation. Finally, I want to thank Congressman Fulcher for his leadership on this bill, Chair Westerman and Ranking Member Grijalvo, as well as Chair Thompson and Ranking Member Scott for their support of this critical legislation. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman from Arizona reserves. Gentleman from Arkansas.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Minnesota, the chairman of the Subcommittee on Energy and Mineral Resources, Mr. Stauber.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Chair Westerman. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of H.R. 1450, the Treating Tribes and Counties as Good Neighbors Act, introduced by my good friend and colleague, Representative Fulcher of Idaho. St. Louis County, Minnesota is the largest county east of the Mississippi River and the place I've always called home. St. Louis County is a checkerboard of federal and non-federal land. As such, there are many actors managing the land, be it the Bureau of Land Management or the U.S. Forest Service that manage our federal lands, or the states, the counties, and the local tribes that manage our non-federal lands. Since its introduction over two decades ago, the Good Neighbor Authority program has facilitated co-stewardship of our federal and non-federal lands. By partnering federal land managers with stakeholders, we have created healthier forests, lowered fire risks, and better conserved our landscapes. However, the most successful stewardship of our public land occurs when all parties are brought together and everyone is able to do their part. Unfortunately, our counties and tribal partners, who do a lion's share of the work on federal lands, are still unable to access the Good Neighbor Authority program. H.R. 1450 will allow our counties and federally recognized tribes to access this critical management tool and allow them the ability to reinvest in restoration projects. This will build on the success of the program and further benefit our conservation efforts across this nation. This bipartisan bill passed both the Natural Resources Committee and Agricultural Committee with broad support. I am hopeful that the House can continue this forward momentum today, and I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting this legislation. Thank you, and I yield back.
Reserve.
Gentleman from Arkansas reserves. The gentleman from Arizona.
Mr. Speaker, I have no further requests for time. We're prepared to close. I'll continue to reserve.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, the chairman of the Committee on Agriculture, Mr. Thompson.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Much appreciation to my colleague and fellow chair for his leadership with the Natural Resource Committee. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong support of H.R. 1450. The Good Neighbor Authority has been a vital tool to get forest management and restoration projects off the ground. This program helps the Forest Service address the wildfire and forest health crisis and serves as a model for highly effective partnerships. While the 2018 Farm Bill expanded the Good Neighbor Authority program eligibility to counties and tribes, the law did not authorize counties and tribes to retain timber revenues from the Good Neighbor Authority agreements as states do. In extending this authority to counties and tribes, this bill will expand this important forest management tool to help reduce wildfire risk and improve forest health at a meaningful scale. Now, I'm proud to report that the H.R. 1450 passed unanimously out of the Committee on Agriculture and then followed suit with a unanimous vote in the Natural Resource Committee. It is clear this legislation represents a common sense fix to a valuable forest management program. Now, I urge my colleagues to support the Treating Tribes and Counties as Good Neighbors Act and vote yes on passage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to the chairman, and I yield back.
Mr. Speaker, I must say that it's an honor to work with a colleague like Chairman Thompson, who cares so much about forest health, and I appreciate the ranking member and the minority in supporting this bill as well, as it did pass unanimous out of both committees. I have no further requests for time. I'm prepared to close, and I continue to reserve.
All right. Reserves. Gentleman from Arizona to close.
Thank you very much. I urge my colleagues to support the legislation. It creates parity and access for two significant constituencies, counties and tribes, and creates parity for them. And I think at the end of the day, creates a collaborative effort that is more comprehensive and more extensive. With that, I yield back. Balance of our time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Arkansas.
Mr. Speaker, the magnitude of our forest health crisis demands an all hands-on-deck approach that utilizes all of the tools in the toolbox. The Good Neighbor Authority has proven to be an exceptional tool when used with states, and we need to improve and expand on that with H.R. 1450 by including tribes and counties. I urge adoption of the bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 1450? Those in favor say aye. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Speaker, I object to the vote on the ground that a quorum is not present and make the point of order that a quorum is not present.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this motion will be postponed.